petty family feud started with my brother-in-law's wife picking a fight with me. Until then, there were no issues, just a peaceful life with my in-laws. I'm Hannah, a 35-year-old housewife, married for 3 years. My husband, Roy, is a year older than me and currently runs his father's company. It's a well-loved, reputable local business founded by his father. I stay out of the company's business. I'm studying law for the future. My relationship with my in-laws is good. I moved in with my in-laws right after getting married, but my father-in-law hardly goes to the office now, enjoying socializing with friends, and my mother-in-law works all day in accounting at his company, so they really appreciate my handling of all the housework. Additionally, Roy has an older sister, who is 3 years his senior and works at their father's company with her husband, and a younger brother, 2 years his junior, who works at a friend's company and has moved out. Since I had little interaction with them, there were no issues. The peace was disrupted when Roy's brother, Tyler, married 27-year-old Melissa. She was already pregnant at the time of the marriage and gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, 2 months later. In contrast, Roy and I don't have children. Only my in-laws, Roy's sister, my husband Roy, and I know this, but the issue lies with Roy. However, Melissa, who doesn't know this, started saying that their family is more suitable to inherit the company. Initially, Melissa asked me, "You're already past 30 and still don't have kids. Why is that?" Honestly, I've been fed up with people asking, "No kids yet?" or saying, "It's your duty as the eldest son's wife to bear an heir." Of course, I married Roy knowing we couldn't have children, so I just laughed off such comments. So, as usual, I vaguely answered Melissa, "Well, that's something only God can decide." Then she bluntly said, "Doesn't that mean you're defective as a woman and a wife? Unlike you, I've given birth to both a boy and a girl, so don't you think our family should be the successor?" She even pressed, "My husband, Tyler, also thinks it's unfair for Roy to take over the company. Can't you talk to Roy about handing over his position to my husband?" I replied, "That's not something I should interfere in. If you're so keen on succeeding the company, you should discuss it directly with our father-in-law. Though Roy is currently in charge, the company's CEO is still his father. I thought talking to the father-in-law might change things, but..." Melissa retorted, "That's why I'm asking you." Apparently, Tyler was quite rebellious when younger, leading to a pretty bad reputation locally. According to Melissa, his parents know this, so it's unlikely they'd choose him as a successor. She insisted, "That's why I'm asking you. Even if Roy takes over, there's no next generation to follow, right? It'd be better if Tyler became the president from the start. So, don't tell me about it. If Tyler was wild in his youth, then he should work on redeeming himself." As I grew increasingly angry and voiced my opinion strongly to Melissa, she looked annoyed and snapped, "Fine. Just watch me." It seemed like she was plotting something. Over the weekend, Melissa and Tyler suddenly showed up with their twins. Since they hadn't visited much after the birth, everyone exclaimed, "How adorable. Do they look like me?" "Look at their eyes," said the grandparents, though honestly, they didn't resemble the grandfather. The in-laws were overjoyed. Tyler, grinning foolishly, was buttering up, saying, "Right? They'll probably grow up to be great kids, just like Grandpa. Your genes are amazing." Melissa also spoke to the twins, "Look, here's Grandpa and Grandma. They're going to love you a lot." "Ah, I see, that's their strategy. It's indeed quicker to use the grandchildren card than to redeem the tarnished reputation of Tyler. But, I think, or rather I'm sure, their efforts are in vain." While I thought this, Melissa looked at me and smirked. "I want to raise these children to be as respectable as you. Can I bring them here often to show them your admirable ways?" I thought it's ridiculous to show this to infants, but the father-in-law was surprisingly happy and agreed readily. Then, getting carried away, Tyler asked in a wheedling tone, "Dad, we're really struggling financially now with 2 kids all of a sudden. My current job pays poorly. Could you help us out a bit for your adorable grandchildren?" The grandfather, smitten with the twins, agreed to give a monthly allowance of $1,000. My mother-in-law and Roy watched her with complex expressions. Later, my mother-in-law told me that she and my sister-in-law had to apologize a lot for Tyler's past misdeeds. The diligent and hardworking sister-in-law, who is the opposite of Melissa and Tyler, strongly opposed their marriage, and the mother-in-law regretted not listening to her. It's unthinkable that couple could raise their kids properly. And I was terrified they'd dump the twins on us, she said. Indeed, I agreed. Hannah, this is no time to be relaxed. If they bring the twins over on weekdays, you'll be the one looking after them. That's right. I've never raised children, so there's no way I could properly care for babies just a few months old. But surely, Melissa wouldn't leave her twins with someone like me, I thought. Since you probably can't have kids anymore, I'll let you have a pretend experience, Melissa told me. A few days later, in the afternoon, Melissa brought the roughly half-year-old babies to our house and tried to leave by herself. Hey! That's incredibly irresponsible. What if something happens to these kids? I shouted in anger. Melissa replied cheerfully, if anything happens, I'll blame it all on you. Poor mother to have such a daughter-in-law. Hearing that, I completely lost my temper. Using your own children for your and your husband's schemes. Enough is enough. What? Scheming? Watch how you talk. Isn't it sad for your mother-in-law and father-in-law? Having an infertile woman like you as the eldest son's wife, leading to the end of the company in the next generation. Why do you assume it'll end? What are you talking about? Since the eldest son, Roy, doesn't have kids, there won't be a next generation once he becomes the president. Someone else will become the president. I won't let that happen. After yelling that, Melissa actually left the two babies behind and walked out. What should I do? My mother-in-law is super busy with the company's year-end accounting. Should I contact my husband? But Roy has zero experience with child-rearing too, and he has apologized many times for the fact that I can't get pregnant because of him. Should I really discuss the baby situation with him? While I was pondering, the two babies started crying almost simultaneously. The father-in-law tried to soothe them but couldn't. Right, my sister-in-law has experience with child-rearing. Remembering this, I quickly contacted her, and she came right over. At 10 p.m., a drunken Melissa was greeted by me, my husband, the in-laws, and her husband. My sister-in-law was in another room, making sure the twins didn't wake up. What's going on? Why is everyone here? Melissa was visibly shaken. The mother-in-law asked why she left the children for 7 hours. Oh, that? Hannah insisted on taking care of them and kicked me out. How awful, right? Roy responded to Melissa's smooth lie. I heard all your conversation with Hannah this afternoon. You really talked down my wife. Actually, Roy had been troubled by Melissa's recent behavior and had installed listening devices after her last visit. Melissa was momentarily flustered but then said, isn't it the truth? The eldest son's wife can't even have children. Quiet. That's when the mother-in-law raised her voice. The fact that these two don't have children is something my husband and I have already accepted. It's none of your business. Before marrying, Roy and I had a bridal check at the hospital to see if we could conceive. That's when it was discovered that Roy had a congenital issue preventing us from having children. The mother-in-law cried, apologizing for giving birth to Roy that way. That's why she protected me from Melissa's abusive words. And she kept the fact that Roy was the cause a secret. Her kindness truly touched me. After being scolded by the mother-in-law, Melissa, unable to grasp the situation, turned to plead with the father-in-law. But, we have children. To ensure the company's continuation, the next generation's successor is necessary, right? Right? Then the father-in-law calmly replied. We haven't thought that far. Whoever becomes the next president can decide. Choosing a successor just because they have children is absurd. Hearing this, Melissa and Tyler's expressions changed. So, does that mean Roy is the next president? Tyler almost shrieked. The father-in-law responded. No, I'll let your sister take over. We decided this before you two got married. The brother-in-law couple's faces looked as if they had been hit by a bullet. But, the sister is a woman, Tyler managed to say. The father-in-law cut him off. She has always been excellent academically and popular. Plus, you might not know this, but she had to apologize for your misdeeds. Since then, she's been known locally as polite and dependable. Next to the stunned brother-in-law, Melissa turned her anger towards me. You knew about this, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me? What? I did say, someone else will become the president. I'm not part of their company, so I can't say more than that. Then Roy chimed in. The $1,000 we were giving you was from my pocket. We couldn't use the company's money, and I wanted my dad to enjoy his salary and pension. Plus, I do love my nephew and niece. But after discussing with Dad and my sister, we've decided to stop it from now on. Hearing this, both Melissa and Tyler went pale. What? That's a problem. We're spending so much on childcare. Such excuses didn't work with my husband. What are you talking about? We felt sorry for you saying life was tough, so my sister and I discussed hiring Tyler in our company. When we had a private investigator check as part of a background check, we found out you two often left your kids with your parents to go clubbing. At this revelation, the couple collapsed on the spot. Still, they desperately clung to their in-laws, but the father-in-law firmly stated, "We're leaving the company to your sister and her husband, and the house affairs to Roy and his wife. Please don't rely on us anymore," and they were left crying. Starting a family feud for nothing. Later, I heard that the brother-in-law couple were discussing divorce. Neither wants to pay alimony nor child support, and the brother-in-law is ranting, "They're not my kids. They don't look like me," while Melissa left the kids with her parents and is refusing to let them see their father. Apparently, she doesn't want a DNA test. Whether or not the twins have the brother-in-law's blood, they will certainly not inherit the company, but it's a bit sad for the innocent twins. Roy, my husband, is set to become the president of the subsidiary where my sister-in-law and her husband have been working since before our marriage. I won't be helping with my in-laws' company, and I've been studying labor law. It's to assist in this new role. I'm also scheduled to be appointed as the executive vice president, and I'm determined to make it a better place for our employees to enjoy working. I'm Emily, a 33-year-old housewife, have my same-aged husband, Mike, and our 5-year-old daughter, Lucy. Mike and I joined the same company in the same year and quickly hit it off. We dated for 2 years and got married when we were 24. I became pregnant with Lucy at the age of 27 and quit my job, but a year later, Mike also resigned and started his own business. Honestly, I didn't want him to start a business at a time when we needed more money, but Mike, who never listens to others, suddenly said one night, "I quit my job," and it was too late. His business struggled to take off, and there were months when our income was less than $1,000. Despite this, Mike casually used my savings from before we were married for cash flow, plunging our family into extreme poverty. I had no choice but to work as an office clerk at a nearby company, and since Mike mostly worked from home, I asked him to take care of Lucy. He's quite careless, so there were some nerve-wracking moments, but when Lucy entered kindergarten, he started to help with drop-offs and pickups. I kept telling myself this kind of marriage was okay. However, since Lucy started kindergarten, Mike's behavior began to change. He would keep his cell phone all the time, frequently messaged someone, and smirked while reading texts, typical signs of cheating. He would leave Lucy alone and go out, and once she even fell down the stairs and broke her bone. Why do you go out alone? What if she had been seriously hurt? Shut up, if that happened, we could just have another kid. I was shocked by his words. I was stunned, and Mike said, but I don't want to do it with you anyway," smirking. He's definitely cheating, and in his heart, he's already abandoned Lucy and me. I was so shocked I couldn't even cry. After that, Mike began to brazenly stay out overnight. I even received creepy calls with nothing but loud laughter from a woman, presumably his mistress. "If you want a divorce, just say it. Am I just an ATM to you?" I was so angry I couldn't sleep. I desperately wanted a divorce and to come out ahead, but Mike always locked his room when he went out, so I couldn't find any proof or information about his mistress, and it was agonizing. Then, suddenly, everything came to light. One night, I got a call from the police. Mike had been in a traffic accident. It was a single-car accident, and he was with a woman in a rental car. A woman, his mistress, right? He said he was on a business trip, but it was a lie. I was boiling with anger as I contacted my parents to take care of Lucy and drove to the hospital where Mike was taken. Sorry, I got a call from the police earlier. I asked at the ER reception, and it seemed he was not in life-threatening condition. I felt relieved when I heard it. Oh no. Why am I relieved? I should have not cared about that cheater's life. Muttering to myself, I went to his room just as the attending doctor was coming out. Fortunately, there's no head injury. But he suffered multiple fractures and bruises from the impact, and there might be lasting disabilities, the doctor said. Understood. Thank you. And, the woman who was with him, they didn't tell me clearly, but it seemed she hadn't been wearing a seatbelt and had sustained serious facial injuries and a strong impact to her neck. Hearing this, I shuddered but thought, that's divine punishment. When I entered the room, it was a two-bedroom, and Mike and the woman who seemed to be his mistress were both sleeping there. The nurse said they usually separate men and women into different rooms, but due to a lack of room, they had to put both of them in the same room for now. So, the woman next to him must be the one who was in the rental car with him. I found myself staring intently at the woman's face. Oh. Could she be Lucy's kindergarten teacher? Her forehead was covered in bandages, but the distinctive large mole and plump lips were unmistakably those of the teacher, Margaret. I couldn't help but yell out. What is this all about? Mike woke up to my voice, and seeing my glare, he panicked. Well, I had my suspicions. It was strange when you, not a morning person, started setting alarm to take Lucy to kindergarten 2 years ago. But I never imagined it was an affair with her teacher. Well, it was just, she was young and beautiful, a moment of weakness. Mike's unusually meek response was probably because he had already been told by the doctor about the possibility of lasting disabilities. Haltingly, he explained, and he looked like a truly pathetic loser. Any remaining affection I had for him vanished in that moment. I looked him straight in his eyes and said, well, at least this makes things clear. I want a divorce. Mike turned pale and started to beg desperately. Wait, just wait. I'm sorry. I won't ever do anything like this again. So? Please. Take care of me. Why? Why? Are you going to abandon me now that I'm like this? They said I might end up in a wheelchair. And? Are you really that heartless? After all the time you spent comfortably living off my earnings. Comfortably? Don't make me laugh. We barely made ends meet with your unstable income from your self-employment, and it was my job that kept us going. Remember when you were making like $500 or $1,000 a month? He bit his lip in frustration. I turned my gaze to the mistress's bed. Despite all this commotion, she slept soundly, apparently still under the effect of the strong anesthesia she got at the hospital after crying out in pain. Well, you two can lick your wounds together. Luckily, it seems she doesn't have any problems with her limbs. With that, I left the hospital room. Now, what to do next? I should report this to the parents-in-law, sort out alimony, asset division, and child support. What about Margaret? I guess I should contact her parents first. Thinking all this, I went to my parents' house to tell them everything. Of course, they were furious and said that Lucy could stay with them for now and that I should also come back to live with them immediately. Our house is about a 30-minute drive from my parents', and considering everything, it's probably best to transfer Lucy to a different kindergarten. The next day, I went to the kindergarten to report her leaving and complete the paperwork. There was a bit of a stir when they couldn't get in touch with the teacher, Margaret. Ignoring that, I completed the formalities and was about to leave when a mother of one of Lucy's friends approached me. It's unusual to see you here, it's always been your husband lately. When I told her about the accident and his hospitalization, she said, oh dear, that's terrible. My husband and I will go visit him in the hospital. Right, her husband works in the same field as Mike and they were good friends. An idea popped into my head. Everything went according to my plan after that. I urged her to go as soon as possible, and thanks to that, she and her husband visited him on Saturday of that week. Mike and Margaret were still in the same hospital room at that time. Of course, I had told the mom friend in advance that the person he was with is also hospitalized in the same room. I didn't say who it was, though. What's going on? Why is Margaret there? She called me right after leaving the hospital room. That's when I told her about Mike's affair with her for the past 2 years, and how they sneaked out for a drive that night. I've decided to divorce him. I'm moving back to my parents' house and transferring Lucy to a different kindergarten. It's really sad to leave a wonderful mom like you. I buttered her up a bit, knowing her love for gossip. By Monday, she would probably spread the news. The next day, Sunday, I went back to the hospital. It was to discuss the divorce with Mike. However, he was desperately begging me for forgiveness. Please. I'll never do anything like this again. I swear. You're the only one who can save me. I'll become a good husband and father from now on, he pleaded, almost prostrating himself. Then, Margaret, who had woken up in the next bed, shouted out. Wait a minute. This is no joke. If our affair gets out, I won't be able to stay at the kindergarten anymore. And with these scars on my face. You'll have to marry me. To her outburst, Mike was unbelievably cold. You're not a sight for sore eyes anymore. Sorry, but I can't live with a woman like that. What did you say? It's your fault for driving poorly. It's because you kept touching me such part. You're the one who told me to touch there. So, that's what caused the accident. I couldn't help but smirk at this revelation. Once their argument settled down, I spoke kindly to Mike. I understand how you feel. But given what's happened, I want to settle things between us first. Let's get divorced. Then we can look for ways to start over. His face brightened a bit at this. So, you'll still take care of me? Yes. But as a consequence of your affair, I want to get divorced first and then sort out the alimony, asset division, and child support. That way, I can also clear my mind. He seemed to agree with my explanation. Happily, he agreed with the divorce along with a pledge to pay a total of $150,000 in alimony, asset division, and child support in one lump sum. After leaving the hospital, I went straight to the lawyers and proceeded with the divorce. A week later, Mike contacted me. Hey, you haven't visited me since then. You said you would take care of me. Oh, right. We need to talk about that. I was a bit suggestive in my response. Talk? About what? About how much you're going to pay me. What? He sounded utterly baffled, so I explained politely. Like a hospital sitter service or care assistance. It's about $30 per hour, so for 2 hours a day, 10 days a month, that's $600. Plus, travel expenses of $15 for each round trip, making it $750 in total. I'll need that up front, please. Wait, what are you saying? You're charging me? Of course, we're strangers now. I have to be compensated. At this point, Mike cursed me, you're the worst. I get it, I understand his feelings. His job requires on-site inspections, but with his condition, that's impossible for now. Moreover, Margaret is demanding $300,000 in damages because of her facial scars. And there's probably a bill for the totaled rental car. Well, it looks like our negotiation is off. You better ask your parents for help. With that, I hung up. Later, I heard Mike was discharged and went back to his parents' house. But apparently, his elderly parents couldn't provide adequate care, and he often fell out of his wheelchair and is now almost bedridden. Also, Margaret reportedly left the kindergarten and is now a shut-in at her parents' house, bombarding Mike's family with angry calls and emails daily. It seems the only lasting scar is on her forehead, but for her, who prided herself on her beauty, it's unforgivable. It's a pity, but she also had to pay alimony for the affair, and her parents covered the shortfall. For them, it might have been just a fling. But what you do comes back to you. I feel sorry for them, but it's divine justice. They should live with their guilt. I feel bad for burdening Lucy so suddenly. But fortunately, she's adapted well to her new kindergarten, which relieves me. As for me, I've settled down and am enjoying my work every day. Even among friends, manners are important. Especially when it comes to money, make sure you are thorough. My mother repeated this often, whether something happened in the past or not. Little did I know, this advice would come in handy in such a way. My name is Sally. I'm a 30-year-old part-time worker, living with my 4-year-old daughter and my husband, Bob, an office worker. My in-laws live 2 train stops away from our rented apartment, close to Bob's office, so he often has dinner there. It might sound generous, but Bob is careless and selfish. He'd drop by his parents' house on a whim after work, not even thinking to tell me who's preparing dinner. I've warned him many times, but he just makes excuses like Mom said she's making meatloaf and mashed potatoes tonight, and doesn't apologize. Instead, my father-in-law called, asking, "Did Bob let you know he's coming over here?" Thankfully, this prevented our dinner from being wasted. While my father-in-law is considerate, my mother-in-law is snide, saying things like, "Bob just prefers my cooking over his wife's." Every time Bob visits them, she'd call, gloating, "He just feels more at ease at home." "Sally, you need to make a home where your husband wants to stay." She'd look down on me, asserting her superiority as a woman and a mother, and would barge into our apartment whenever she found the time. "Bob can't relax with this kind of cleaning. And what's this in the fridge?" She'd nitpick my cleaning and snoop through our fridge. She'd even throw out my cooking, saying, "How dare you cook such an awful meal for Bob? Any wife who doesn't take care of food is the worst. Everything you cook just goes to waste." When I pointed out, I could have eaten it instead of throwing it away. "You're the one wasting food," she'd turn red with rage and start yelling. My daughter would start crying in shock, and my mother-in-law would hurriedly leave, not wanting to be disliked by her. She's selfish and runs away when things get tough. I told Bob about her bullying, but he'd just brush it off with, "You're just imagining things," or, "She doesn't mean any harm." I was attracted by his bright and sociable nature, but that seems like a distant memory now. He's just moody, dismissing our daughter when she tries to talk to him. His standing as a father has hit rock bottom. To make matters worse, the education fund we had been saving monthly for our daughter had completely vanished. It was a withdrawal of a huge sum, $40,000. It had to be Bob, who has a family card. When I asked him about the money with certainty, he said, "Our daughter doesn't need money right now. We can save up again when it's necessary." His cavalier attitude snapped something in me. "Don't joke around. How could you just use the money we saved together like that? It's not about current need. We saved it because we don't know when we'll need it. What did you even spend it on?" "I helped out Mom." "Our money? It's mostly what I earned." "Got a problem with that?" "I contributed too. I saved from our budget cuts. I worked hard to manage that money. Your money is just birdseed." Our shouting match escalated, thankfully without waking our daughter. "That's it, we're getting a divorce. I knew you were careless, but to withdraw our child's savings without a word is unbelievable. Go ahead. Like you can make it on a part-time salary." "What?" I was at a loss for words. Seemingly satisfied with having silenced me, my husband sneered, "I'm always ready for a divorce," and went back to his room. Though I clenched my fists in frustration, I wasn't going to just cry myself to sleep. Having reached that conclusion, I began preparing for the divorce. I heard my wife talking on the phone with Bob this morning. I received that message from my father-in-law the following Friday. My mother-in-law called my husband, inviting him for a special dinner tonight, it seemed. Since Bob hadn't mentioned anything to me, he was probably planning to go without telling me again. Since the day I declared divorce and was belittled for my part-time job, Bob's attitude towards me had changed to one of disdain. "I don't need to care for a dependent like you," he'd say, scattering the laundry around and no longer cleaning the room. His nitpicking, "You call this cleaning," was just like his mother's. I saw the call from my father-in-law as the perfect opportunity and decided to put my plan into action. I timed my visit to my in-laws' house to coincide with Bob's return from work. It seemed my father-in-law hadn't returned home yet. Bob and my mother-in-law were surprised to see me, but she scoffed, "Oh. Knowing we're having sushi for dinner, you came to freeload. How despicable. You don't deserve sushi," he spat vulgarly. They clearly had no intention of letting me step inside. Their house, though a detached house, had a wooden front door that wasn't very soundproof. Their loud shouting could be heard outside. As usual, they were a selfish pair, oblivious to those around them. Unfortunately, I haven't received any message about coming for sushi. The only thing I was told by your father was that you were visiting your parents' house. Are you being sarcastic because I didn't inform you? Do I need to report my every move to a mere housemaid? Talking to my dad behind my back, as a wife, that's just creepy. He seemed to be entranced by his own abusive words. While my mother-in-law smirked in the background, my retort, "The creepy one is you," froze her smile. What did you say? It's disgusting to misinterpret your father's kindness like that. It's because you're a no-good husband who doesn't communicate. Can't you see he's just trying to be considerate? He seemed to be aware of his lack of communication. My husband bit his lip and fell silent. Then you should have declined. Causing trouble for Dad and being such a brazen wife. My mother-in-law defended him, but she was just a woman of empty words. Please keep barking over there. I didn't come here to waste my time arguing with you. Let's get straight to the point. I want a divorce. What? For real? His eyes widened in genuine surprise. You think you can make it on a part-time salary? That's right, I'm not giving you our granddaughter. You can't raise her. Go apologize to Mom. I explained the situation calmly to the screaming pair. From next month, I'll be working as a full-time employee. I'm currently working part-time in medical administration. It's the place where I worked full-time before getting married. When I mentioned thinking about divorce to my colleagues, they suggested returning to full-time work. The kindergarten my daughter attends is close to this workplace. I can pick her up during my break and she can stay at the workplace's daycare until the end of my shift. They even gave me this advice. No way you can raise her alone, my mother-in-law insisted. But anticipating you'd say that, I've already arranged to live with my parents. They're taking care of my daughter today. Unlike a certain husband who just dismisses his daughter, they shower her with love and attention. What? My mother-in-law turned to Bob, who awkwardly looked down. Don't joke. That's unacceptable. Her trembling voice betrayed her agitation. A father who secretly uses the education fund is nothing but harmful. As I firmly stated that, the front door opened and my father-in-law said, "Sorry for interrupting. Can I hear more about this?" It seems that my father-in-law was listening at the front entrance. You used the education fund? What do you mean, Bob? Dad. It's not like that. Mom asked me for help with renovation funds, so I supported her. Renovation funds? My father-in-law seemed just as puzzled and asked my mother-in-law for a detailed explanation. Bob suggested me to live together. It's more economical than continuing to pay rent. And if we're going to live together, renovations are necessary, right? That's the money. I felt dizzy as new information kept coming. Living together? I haven't heard a word about that. And what's this about education fund? Sally, can you explain? I explained to my father-in-law about the money Bob had withdrawn and that we were getting a divorce. Then you should just leave. Leave the granddaughter here. I'll take care of her. My mother-in-law insisted, trembling. No, this was a decision made by my husband. I can't stoop so low as to break a promise between spouses. Huh? I don't recall agreeing to anything like that. I thought to myself, pulling out a file from my bag and showing it to them. This is the pledge we made when saving for the education fund. Knowing Bob's carelessness, I had documented our agreement just in case. Always document anything related to money. It's one of the lessons from my mother. Bob's signature is here, my father-in-law noted, sounding impressed. What? Why is this written here? Bob panicked, likely having signed without reading. Simply put, the agreement stated that if the education funds were used for anything else, it would lead to an immediate divorce. If there were children involved, custody would go to the other parent. If he couldn't comply, he'd have to pay twice the amount used, granting me the right to file for divorce mediation. That's the gist of it. In this case, Bob would lose custody and, if unable to comply, would owe me $80,000, giving me the opportunity to pursue divorce mediation. If you listen to your mother, it will be a dispute with a payment of $80,000. I've collected plenty of evidence of your usual attitude and your mother's treatment towards me, so you can guess who'll get custody and mediation. I smiled slyly, and my husband let out a small gasp, in surprise. My father-in-law heaved a big sigh and told my mother-in-law. For now, return the money Bob gave to you. You haven't started the renovations, right? The money should still be there. Upon hearing this, my husband's face brightened immediately. He might have thought the return of the education fund would make the divorce impossible. My mother-in-law, facing his expectant look, turned pale and shook her head. It's gone. I've already spent it. A weak voice responded, and everyone exclaimed in surprise, what? My mother-in-law was trembling and fell silent. There was a bag I wanted, and some clothes too. I just intended to borrow them, but I couldn't resist. Then she confessed. I was speechless with disbelief, but my father-in-law responded quickly. Don't be ridiculous. What were you thinking? But Bob said we could save up again for the granddaughter's education fund, so I thought it would be fine. What? You knew it was for our daughter's education and still spent it? How can you even say you won't hand over the granddaughter? Who's the despicable one here? You and Bob are nothing but harmful. The worst kind of parent and child. I said, my anger peaking and my voice colder than I expected. My mother-in-law just gaped pathetically. I'm sorry, but I no longer want to be part of this family. I agree. They're nothing but poison to our precious granddaughter. My mother-in-law broke down in tears at Phil's words. After that, I divorced Bob. Thanks to the evidence of mistreatment and the pledge, the child support and property division went as I hoped. The education fund, a third of which was from my salary, along with the alimony, totaled $50,000, which I received. According to my ex-husband, he apparently had a hard time coming up with the money. My mother-in-law had to sell all the branded goods and jewelry she had bought, and the remaining amount was covered by my father-in-law. Helping your wife is a husband's job, isn't it? My ex-husband and she blamed my father-in-law, but he got furious and cut ties with both of them. Initially, my ex-husband approached my mother-in-law about living together because he messed up a project at work and was demoted. With a reduced salary, they couldn't afford the apartment rent and had to rent a small apartment. Their only way to raise money was by canceling their life insurance policies. Combining the money returned from each policy, they somehow managed to meet the repayment amount. My ex-husband probably wanted sympathy when he reported the completed payment and talked about his struggles. The ex-husband spoke of his struggles when reporting the completion of payment. I just responded with a "huh" and let it slide. Then he shouted over the phone, "Don't you have a word of gratitude?" "No, I don't. I have grievances, so how about adding that to the bill and charge you?" I suggested, and he fell silent, so I hung up and changed my contact information. That was the last time he contacted me, but apparently, my mother-in-law asked my father-in-law for reconciliation. He obviously refused, but from what he heard, their situation was terrible. Their spending habits hadn't changed, and their household finances were in shambles. Blaming each other, the once loving parent-child duo now lived days full of arguments. "He's your beloved son, isn't he?" my father-in-law said sarcastically. My mother-in-law responded, "He's nothing but an annoying money pit. Whether it's parents and children or spouses, you need to be clear about money matters." Receiving my mother's teaching, I felt deep down that it was a good thing. Marriage fraud refers to pretending to have intentions to marry, only to deceive the other person and extract money or other benefits. This means my husband didn't commit marriage fraud against me. But I'm sure it's still a case of marriage fraud. And that includes my mother-in-law who conspired with him. I'm Emily, 35 years old, and have been married for about 3 years. I recently got promoted to accounting manager in a mid-sized company and earn a decent salary. On the other hand, my husband Michael, 3 years my senior, works in sales at a small business. His salary was already low, and due to the recession, it seems like his pay and bonuses were cut. I don't know the exact amount, but currently, it seems to be about 2/3 of my salary. So, most of the living expenses, including utilities, were coming out of my paycheck. Michael was enthusiastic about having children. He couldn't understand why I was hesitant. At the time of our marriage, several women at my workplace were pregnant or on maternity leave. This increased the workload for everyone in my department, including me, and I wanted to wait until things settled down. I had clearly communicated this to Michael when we got married. Taking maternity leave as a manager during such a busy time isn't ideal. Emily, you're responsible and admirable for thinking that way. Michael said this and agreed with me. Yet, just a month into our marriage, he started pressuring me to have a child. It's totally fine, I'll take care of the grandchild. You just focus on your work. Even his mother, living a 15-minute walk from our new home, chimed in. Until then, my mother-in-law and I hadn't gotten along well. She seemed displeased that I didn't quit my job after getting married. I don't care how good you are at your job, but slacking off and taking care of my son is another matter. Even just being a proper housewife on the weekends would be nice, but you're always just lounging around? No matter how tired, what kind of wife are you? She often criticized, showing her favoritism towards her son. I was also surprised how she managed her finances, often going out or traveling since my father-in-law passed away. Probably, she had an inheritance from my father-in-law who passed away a few years ago. Her sudden offer to help with the grandchild in a sweet tone was suspicious. When I mentioned this to my husband, he got angry. Don't you want to let my mom hold her grandchild? She's just worried about you being over 30 and wants you to have a baby soon. Doubting her kindness is wrong. He yelled. Certainly, that's true, but I couldn't shake off my doubts. However, I wanted children too, so I decided to accept my mother-in-law's kindness. My pregnancy went smoothly without morning sickness, and I was able to take ample maternity leave. With strong encouragement from my mother-in-law, I returned to work 6 months after giving birth. Upon returning, I became an assistant manager with part-time hours, making about 2/3 of my previous salary. Yet, it was comparable to other full-time women of my age, and I was grateful to continue working. My mother-in-law took great care of my child, even encouraging me to go back to full-time. My child became very attached to grandma, which was a bit bittersweet, but I was thankful for the help. About a year later, the topic of living with my mother-in-law came up. She had hinted at it before, but I was too exhausted from work and taking care of my child and Michael to consider it. I thought living with her would not give me peace of mind, so I ignored it. However, she insisted that living together would be better for raising the child. I was mentally prepared to eventually live with my mother-in-law, but I was a bit shocked that the topic came up just 3 years into our marriage. However, considering all the help she's given with the child, I thought I should change my mindset. But I was surprised when I was called to my in-laws' house and heard the proposal from Michael and his mother. This house is pretty old, right? We're thinking about rebuilding it, said my mother-in-law with a smile, looking right at me. Yes, it's indeed quite old and has some issues like leaks. Right? And recently, my back's been hurting, it's really inconvenient. I want to make it barrier-free. But a rebuild would cost several $100,000. I thought there was a decent inheritance when my father-in-law passed away, but neither Michael nor his mother mentioned anything about finances. Worried, I interrupted them while they were excitedly discussing the new house. So, how are we going to finance this? Oh, about that, could you possibly take out the mortgage in your name? What? You know, Michael's salary is quite low. I asked a friend from a bank, and she said it might not pass the credit check. Excuse me? Yeah, you know, my low salary, sorry about that. Wait a minute, what's with this casual attitude? That's going to be difficult for me. Why? We're family, right? We're going to live together after all. That's true, but... Emily, you work at a stable, reputable company, and with your title as assistant accounting manager, they said you'd qualify for a considerable mortgage. We might as well build a nice house, right? But... What's the matter, Emily? Mom's asking so nicely, can't you just agree? That's not so easy. Don't worry. Trust us. I somehow managed to calm the two of them down. I'll think about it. With that, I ended the conversation. Sure, leaving my in-laws' 40-year-old house as is could be a problem. But taking out a full mortgage in my name for construction costs is just not common sense. Michael should understand that too, so why are the two of them conspiring like this? I figured out their plan when I overheard Michael's late-night phone call. When I got up for the bathroom, I heard him whispering in the dark living room. Words like construction costs and bank mortgage were audible. Listening closer, it seemed he was talking to his mother. We're almost there, Emily's about to say yes. Her only good point is earning money, after all. Me? My only good point is earning money? What does that mean? I was stunned and shocked, but then Michael started an even more shocking conversation. Yeah, having the child helps. It's in our court. If we get custody, even after a divorce, there's no problem at all. Emily's always prioritized work over childcare. We'll argue she's not fit as a mother. The child? What about the child? It's in our court? What does custody I mean? They're planning to divorce me. My confusion grew, but then Michael made it clear. Of course, the house won't be in her name. If it's in mine and Mom's name, and the mortgage is in Emily's, she'll keep paying the mortgage even after we divorce. Don't worry. Once we get custody and take the child, Emily will definitely keep paying the mortgage. So, their plan is to take out the mortgage in my name, divorce me, take the child, and use that as leverage to make me keep paying the mortgage? That explains why they suddenly started pushing for a child and offered to take care of it. My shock turned to anger. I wasn't going to let Michael and his mother get their way. I started planning on how to turn the tables on them. First, I told them I would pay for the mortgage and had them visit various home builders and contractors to get an estimate. As I suspected, as they talked with the consultants, the layout and interior specs became increasingly luxurious, and the final cost shot up to nearly $400,000. I then pushed them further. Now that the layout is decided, shouldn't we go look for furniture? It's hard to find pieces you really like. As expected, Michael and his mother only browsed high-end furniture stores and kept buying, storing everything in the store's warehouse. About 4 months later, after they'd spent lavishly, Michael and his mother, who had been out during the day, called me to the in-laws' house. Emily, we've settled on the contractor and are happy with the quotation, so we just signed the construction contract. Can you now formally apply for the mortgage at the financial institution? And we need you to pay 10% as a down payment right away. That's when I dropped the bomb. Sorry. I can't pay for the mortgage. What? Actually, I've bought an apartment, in my name. An apartment? What are you talking about? We decided to live here, why did you go off and do that on your own? You and your mother can live here, but I've decided that the child and I will live in that apartment. What are you saying all of a sudden? With the apartment mortgage, I'm already paying nearly $1,000 a month, so I can't afford to pay for that too. At this point, Michael and his mother panicked. What are you talking about now? You agreed to pay for the mortgage. Yes. We've already bought furniture worth over $20,000. Then I replied. I know everything. Your plan to claim I'm a failure as a wife and mother, divorce me, get custody, and make me pay for the entire mortgage. As I said this, both turned pale but tried to feign ignorance desperately. That's not possible. I know you've been a good mom, even if it's just for a short while. I've heard you've been spreading rumors in the neighborhood. My daughter-in-law doesn't do anything around the house or for the child. Even claiming I've been violent towards the child and you to make it easier to get custody. At this, his mother turned red and fell silent. Then I confronted Michael with the truth. You never showed me your pay stubs because you said you were embarrassed about your low salary. So, I searched your room. I found last year's tax assessment notice. Your income was higher than mine now. What's that about? Well, actually, I have student loan repayments. Do student loan come from nightclubs? What? What are you talking about? I found a nightclub girl's business card in the bill from some shady company. Come back soon, Michael, it said. Michael gave in after I exposed all this. He had been smitten with a girl at that nightclub, spending over $1,000 a month there and giving her an allowance of $500. That's why he had no money for the rebuild. Next was his mother. I let you work, but you never gave me any money. You earn so much. What? I'm out of money. I've used up the inheritance. I thought if I got you divorced from Michael, I could get alimony, and if we got custody, I could get child support from you. How short-sighted, she planned to use that child support, didn't she? How was she planning to raise the child? I immediately presented them with divorce papers and left the in-laws' house with my child. Then I went straight to a lawyer's office. I had recorded the entire conversation earlier. Thanks to that, I was able to get a divorce with alimony, property division, and child support. Especially with Michael's salary deception, which was close to marital fraud, my lawyer pushed hard, and I got a substantial amount in alimony. This has made the payments for my and my child's apartment much more manageable, and I'm really grateful. Meanwhile, Michael and his mother had to pay 10%, $40,000, as a cancellation fee for the construction contract. As for the furniture, they had gone crazy and ordered custom pieces, so they couldn't cancel and received a bill for over $20,000. Obviously, Michael didn't have that kind of money, and his mother had almost exhausted her inheritance, so they had to borrow to pay it off. Now they are living in the old mother-in-law's house that's started to leak, leading a life of extreme poverty. I still get occasional messages from Michael, but I'm pretty sure they're just about borrowing money, so I completely ignore them.